there, folks. I'm Emily.
And I'm Earl.
And this is a podcast. And this podcast is called Oh My Word. We are talking about books, primarily, and movies and TV shows and musicals. And we're telling you what's what. Because listen here, folks. That media that you're consuming, a lot of it is absolute rubbish. They're pushing through messages. It's inappropriate. Some of it's not very well written, though we don't usually comment on that necessarily. I mean, we'll comment on it, but that's not really why we're here. We're here to make sure that your mind doesn't turn into a trash can, because you are what you eat, and your mind is what you read. And if you read trash, your mind becomes trash. And I just made that up, and I am pretty proud of it.
Yeah, so the issue is Emily makes this stuff up, and then she wants to stencil it onto the walls of the basement. So right now we have one wall that's just full of gibberish, but it's on her side of the basement. Oh, I mean, not gibberish. Inspirational quotes is what I meant.
At least my side has color and personality. Elle's side is black because she wears all black because she thinks that she'll be able to meld in to the wall. But what she doesn't realize is that fire engine hair of hers sticks out no matter what she's wearing. So it's not really actually working. Okay,
that's sort of accurate because the one thing that I don't have that's black on my wall, even though they do come in black also, are my white pearls for clutching. Because we have our pearl clutching scale that we use for gauging content of violence, language, and romance. 0 to 4 scale, 0 being the best. So aim for 0, 4 being why don't do this because enough already. Enough.
Right, like even adults don't need 4-level stuff. Every once in a while, you know, a well-placed curse word or a well-executed sex scene adds to the story, but less often than the number of times that it's included.
Yeah, for everything, I'm just like, no. But, so sometimes violence, if it's like a war film, so sometimes the violence is an actual integral part because we can't avoid what war is, for example, right?
Correct.
So it doesn't have to be gory, but it should be truthful, I guess. Or we can't just like pretend like nothing happens in war. So that's why for violence, it might go up on the violence scale and we might be clutching our pearls over it, but we'll explain. So that's what we do also. We explain.
Right.
Why.
We don't just give you our ratings and then trust you to understand that. We explain why we're doing it. And sometimes even as we're discussing it, we readjust our thinking.
Exactly. And I'm just going to segue for you because sometimes that we have to adjust our way of thinking, and sometimes we need other people to guide us, and our thinking leads us, not probably the way you expect, but it leads us into the book we're talking about. Emily, can you guess?
You know, I wish I could, because then I'd say I'm a very literate person, and I've obviously read this ginormous book, but I have not yet read the book, which is the thing that I know about this book is that every time I say it, it makes me think of a sandwich, a delicious sandwich. But that's not what we're talking about. So we're talking about the Count of Monte Cristo. And by the way, a Monte Cristo, you can have it a non-vegetarian or a vegetarian version. I've only ever had the vegetarian version, but it's very worth it. It's a grilled cheese sandwich, but it's like battered and fried. So it's sweet, like the bread is sweet, and then you dip it in like a raspberry or a fruit compote, and it's dusted in powdered sugar. And I think we were supposed to be talking out a book, but I kind of got sidetracked. All right, Count of Monte Cristo. That's what we're talking about. And frankly, I don't understand the segue because, again, I know the sandwich and not the book.
And I think Monte Cristo is a religious island, like reference, not like...
Oh.
But okay. Anyways, what do you know about the book? Well, what do you know about the book, Emily?
I know that it's by Alexander Dumas. And it was completed in 1844. And the book is about Edmond Dante, a 19-year-old Frenchman and first mate of the Pharaon. I'm going to go with Pharaon. And he's falsely accused of treason, arrested, and imprisoned without trial in the Chateau d'If, a grim island fortress. Fellow prisoner Abbé Faria deduces that his jealous rival Fernand Mondego and envious crewmate Danglars and double-dealing magistrate de Villefort turned him in. Faria inspires his, I assume Edmund's, escape and guides Edmund to a fortune and treasure. As the powerful and mysterious Count of Monte Cristo, he arrives from the Orient, wow, offensive, to enter the fashionable Parisian world of the 1830s and avenge himself on the men who conspired to destroy him.
Do you get the segue yet? Oh, not yet.
something about, what was the segue? Something about things are not always as we seem, and we need someone to take us there and help us think. I just thought maybe you meant because it's such a great novel and it makes you think.
Okay.
Not getting it.
So if no one understood until now, like sometimes I'll like, Emily says things and like I don't really listen. No, I mean, that's not what I meant to say. It's because she hasn't yet read The Count of Monte Cristo. So obviously...
I have read The Three Musketeers.
Okay.
Which I say because they're both long French novels and they're both Dumas, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So that should count for something.
Well, whatever. Okay, so here's the deal. I'm not usually overly into, like, I support the classics, quote unquote, but sometimes a lot of them are just like, can you please speak in English? Like, okay, well, this is translated obviously because the French writer, but
yes.
The Count of Monte Cristo is hands down one of my most favorite books ever. Even though, like, you have to slog through a bunch of pages to get to, like, the good stuff. Also, usually, as you know, I don't really mind when books are adapted to film, and I'm not usually nitpicky about it. But The Count of Monte Cristo has never been properly adapted to film. Because the story is so complex with the whole revenge scheme part of it, they usually, like, cut out a lot of the details just to be able to do, like, a 2-hour film out of it. So it really probably would only be justified with, like, a miniseries. Only because you're cutting out the good part of the story. Not in the way of, like, oh, they always leave out the good parts. Because, for example, The Godfather film and book, those are both excellent in their own way, even though the film cuts out a lot of what's in the book. But what's cut out from the book are a lot of some of the side stories and whatever. So you do need it, you don't need it, it doesn't matter. But in Count of Monte Cristo, whenever they adapt it, they don't give you all, like, the full revenge. And also, Edmund's fiance, who he's gonna marry because he gets arrested on the day of his wedding, is, what's her name, like Mercedes? Mercedes? I'm just gonna call her Mercedes, okay?
This is the second time recently we've talked about a Mercedes and you don't know how to pronounce her name.
Yeah,
I think it's
true.
just Mercedes.
Well, because I feel like if it's from the Romance languages, it should be pronounced like a little bit more of like a Spanish, like lilt to it. But I don't, so that's why I'm saying like that, versus like Mercedes. And I think that's her name. Or not Merced, I don't think. I think it's Mercedes. But see, you think I remember because I flip through the book. Every couple of years, I'll flip through the book again. That's how much I like the book. I don't usually reread books because there's so many other books to read, and I don't often revisit. So the thing about the Count of Monte Cristo, okay, two things. Now we're gonna babble a little bit. One thing we have is, did we give our ratings for this?
Oh, we didn't give our ratings. I'll do that real quick. So violence is a 1, language is a 0, and that's not just because it's translated from French and we're not sure whether or not some of the words are dirty words or not. It's actually a 0. Then romance is a 1, and Alt will explain all of those numbers.
Yeah. Violence, I wasn't really sure what to do with the violence because there's not gore or whatever, but there is a lot of, there's like one sword fight, I think, and like some subterfuge and that kind of stuff. So it is violence, not violence. So it has to be there. Language, because those classics are written usually pretty clean. And then the romance is a 1 because, okay, so you have Mercedes-ish, and then there's another girl, the Greek girl. No, she's not Greek. See? Anyways, I flipped through it and I skipped the parts of the girls. Not the parts of the girls, but like the romance parts, because there are other girls that are important to the plot. And you have the one couple they want to get together, blah, blah, okay, whatever. That's not important. Here's the important part. Count of Monte Cristo it's often used, like, I think in the book, in the movie and in the book Sleepers, which if you know, that's from a while ago, but if you know what that is, so often they'll like do, like if there's like a prison scene, like these prison films, they'll do, the Count of Monte Cristo because it's about escape, right? So Edmund escapes, he escapes from the prison, he ties himself in with someone that they're going to bury, and then he doesn't realize that the way they bury is in the sea, so he gets tossed into the sea and he has to like all of a sudden get out of the shroud he buried himself in. But so everyone, it's escape, but it's not about escape. It's about vengeance. It's about jealousy. It's about greed. It's about all these other things, because this is what Edmund doesn't realize. When he gets arrested, he's just like this like poor kind of, he had been a hardworking first mate and everyone liked him because he's just like this genial, good worker. And then the 3 people who are jealous of him or that suspect that he might bring them down because there's the whole Napoleonic thing. Whatever, there's a lot going on. People just read the book, okay? But the point is, these 3 people, they each bring him down for a different reason. One out of jealousy because one of them wants the girl that he's marrying, he wants her. And the other one out of greed. also jealousy because he wants his job. And the other one because he thinks he might destroy him politically, which he's guileless. Like he has no plans to do that. So you have 3 dirty people that bring him down for each of these reasons. And then he uses that to bring them down. Like he uses the one's greed to bring him down, and the one's jealousy like turns it against him, and that kind of stuff. And then usually, what it is a very carefully calculated revenge story. And it's like, if anybody has a good revenge thing, I don't know that there was a better one before this time. Even though they say that he wrote, I think he had like a ghostwriter friend that he used to like come up with plots with. So I think the Count of Monte Cristo is one of those that the author came up like that, but it's still one of the most brilliant. So that's why the details don't always translate into film. So it's very intricate. And the reason why we have to, the whole thing with the guidance of our segue from before is because Edmund doesn't realize that they would have done him in. And it's the well, I'm going to call him Abbey. I don't know if that's how it's pronounced, but like, this guy's basically been trying to tunnel his way out of the thing, and he accidentally tunnels into Edmund's room instead because his calculations were off. So like after however many years, and then he's the one like, okay, well, tell me your story. So he tells him, he's like, oh, I think I got whatever. And he's like, no, the reason why you were here is because these guys put you in. So his first reaction is like, that's it, I'm going to do evil vengeance. And the Abbey is like, no, that's not how you do. Not from anger. You got to calculate. So what he does is that now that they spend the next amount of years digging out of the fortress, because now they got to go in the other direction, he educates him. He educates him in the sciences, math, because the guy's a very educated person. So he basically educates him as they're digging the tunnel. He educates him. That's how he's able to become the Count. As in to come across as an educated individual, right? And then he gets, this Abbey is convinced about this treasure, so he's going to go, he gets the treasure, and he turns himself into the Count of Monte Cristo. That's what he turns himself into. So now he comes into the Parisian society, and they're like, wow, the great Count, blah, 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 is coming, and everyone's so impressed with him, because he's got so much money, he's like spreading all over. And he's so impressive, he's tall, he's handsome, blah, 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 whatever. Mm-hmm. And then he has this young girl who, maybe she is Greek, I don't remember. Basically, Fernand Mondego, he basically got like his start and his money, because all these guys become very successful, the 3 guys who sold him out. But he basically gets like his position he was going to be like a mercenary for a king or something, then he sold him out. And then it's his daughter that Edmund rescues the daughter, and like, but nobody realizes that like there's that connection there. So it's like, oh, he has this young girl that's his ward sort of thing, but like she recognizes the guy who sold out her dad and like brought him down, all that kind of stuff. She's this beautiful young woman, and everyone's like, oh, who's the beautiful young woman? Blah blah blah. In the meantime, after he does, you have like hundreds and hundreds of pages of this really intricate vengeance thing about how he brings each one of them down according to, there's one chapter, which is maybe like 3, I'm going to say it's 3, it's not, it's like maybe 5, 6, 10 pages, but it's a very small section from all of it where he reflects on what he's done. And he's like, maybe I went too far. Maybe it wasn't my position to be the angel of vengeance against these people. Like, did I take God's position in trying to like be like vigilante vengeance, basically? And then he's like, nah, okay, keep going with this life. And everything turns out happily ever after for Edmund. Like, which I'm not sure what kind of moral lesson is being taught there. But it is, honestly, from the clock. And I have read The Three Musketeers, and I read The Man in the Iron Mask from him also. But from a lot of the classics, I know everyone gets very excited with like Anna Karenina and those kind of stories. But for me, The Count of Monte Cristo is one of the best ever. So we're talking about it a lot because everyone should read the book, forget about the films, even though I think it was one of the films that made me then go to read the book. Then I was like, wow, they don't cover the story at all. And they also always try to put like Emmett and Mercedes together again, but like that doesn't happen. This does not happen in the book because it's like they're past that point of like reuniting. Also, she married the other guy, so come on. Anyways, if it's just like the intricate plot and all that kind of stuff, I don't know if I've sold the book, but you should all read the book. It's fantastic. And it's a good thought. It could be a good, I don't want to say thought exercise, but a good thing about like where can greed and jealousy, and not standing by morals and all this thing, where can it lead to? And also, what does the reverse of it look like? If someone, is he right to enact vengeance? Or is he right to have brought them down? Do you see how there's quote unquote original sins are what then led to their downfalls. So there is a lot that even if it's like just because Edmund kind of, his life ends up, he has a happy ending, but you have to look at what the cost of it was. And we ask, like, there's a lot to examine in all of it, aside from being just like a great story. So that's my thing for the Count of Monte Cristo. That's something worth putting up on the wall.
Yes. Well, I think that's sort of just add my 2 cents, because otherwise I can't add anything about the book in particular. But that's the thing about classics. Like, people always ask, what makes a book a classic? And some of it, yes, just has to do with time and its popularity. Some things, just because they're old and they're popular, they're classics. But if you look at the great classic literature, it has in common is, yes, good storytelling and also some sort of artistry. But really at the heart of it, it makes you think. It brings up these great themes. And in a way, like, you can't necessarily put your finger on it, but you could point to a different, like, we even talked about it with young adult novels. Like, I would say, I don't know, and what's that guy, Unwind and the Scythe series, can't think of his name, Neil Schusterman.
Yeah.
Neil Schusterman writes books that are more thought-provoking than Gossip Girl. I liked Gossip Girl. They're both like teenage stories, but one might actually enter the annals as a classic. Well, actually, probably Gossip Girl would, because it's popular. But
yeah.
But the important thing is these big themes, and that's what makes the stories timeless, is not the genre or where they're rooted, but that they bring up these human issues and emotions and values, and it doesn't matter where you live or what time you live in. You can relate because they're universal. They're just universal themes.
Yeah. Well, also because even if they say, because there's this whole thing now about like, oh, we don't get the certain classics out of the classroom. Why are we reading these classics when there's so many good books today? Which, yeah, there are a lot of good books today, and some people don't have like a full defense of the classics to be able to say why the classics are so important. But another thing is that a lot of them are the originals. Like, this is where, like, for example, I mean, it's not a great example, but like Hamlet is the story of the Lion King, or the Lion King is Hamlet. So you could say, okay, Lion King's already dated at this point, even though it's still one of the greatest of Disney. But you could say, why get rid of Hamlet? We have Lion King. But like, no, it came from Hamlet. Like, you have so many stories. Like, they're better examples, but there's so many books that are rooted in the classics. Because the classics, part of what makes them classics is they were the first one to, like, I'm going to butcher the name now, but like Don Quixote's like that, right? It was one of the first novels ever, but it also this kind of maverick, well, we have the word now, right? It's a verb now to describe someone a certain way. So that's why, because it started it. So because we want the origin text. That's why we go back also to the classics. The universal themes, the origin. There's a lot of books that were written in those days that are not around anymore, you know?
Right.
But the ones that have, there's a reason why the ones that have stuck around, and not just because someone keeps printing them.
Right. There's a reason why certain Shakespeare plays are done more than other Shakespeare plays.
Yes.
We have
exactly.
33 of them, but you really see some of them more because Romeo and Juliet and Hamlet and Twelfth Night sort of resonate with people more than Titus Andronicus does.
And that's that.
So read more classics.
You read more classics, but you're allowed to articulate what you like or don't like about it, or just see how it's an origin to trace it. Even though War and Peace was very difficult to get through. It took me a long time to get through War and Peace. So I don't know, maybe you have to read all classics, but Count of Monte Cristo is definitely one of them.
We are all adding it to our collective to-be-read lists. Thank you, Elt.
Yay! You're welcome. Winner!
And for those of you who don't think that you can stomach a 600-page book, you can probably stomach a Monte Cristo sandwich. And therefore, we can all participate in Monte Cristo in some fashion or another. And we'll all be happy. We talk about food on this podcast almost as much as we talk about books.
Yeah, okay, but before she starts listing the recipe again, we're just going to quickly sign out of this episode because enough already.
Oh yeah, okay, thanks for listening.
Cheers, people. Oh My Word podcast is brought to you by the pearl-clutching basement dwellers at Oh My Word. Follow us on Instagram for updates at Oh My Word Podcast, or like and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. For full episode notes and detail, visit eltenenbaum.com. Music is by Tim Burke. See you next time.